meeting's minutes. Motion by Supervisor Frazier. We have a second. Supervisor Taylor. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Brian and Amy. Welcome this morning.
Thank you, Supervisor Wood. Item 1, this is a request for myself, travel to the Oxcom course. This is a federal FEMA radio course, which will allow me to instruct our RACES people when I get done with that. It will be handled at SUNY Oswego, and this is for overnight stay for 2 nights. The course does not come out of our budget.
Okay, we have a motion to get it on the floor. Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Taylor. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Number 2 is a resolution request to establish a contract with Tetra Tech. They are the company that responded and was the successful bidder in our request for proposals 37-15. What this does is it gives us the ability to have a previous or a standing contract with a company that can help us in the event of a major emergency or for planning and for doing exercises. This company does all those things, but this gives us an agreement that we have up front. So when we need something in a hurry, we don't have to go through the whole bidding process.
All right. Do we have a motion to get on the floor? Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Okay, number 3 is a request to establish a new contract with USGS, United States Geological Service. This is so that we can supplement the funds that are used to operate the river gauge at Riverbank on the Schroon River. This gauge has been there a number of years. One of the original organizations that was paying part of the cost to operate that is no longer doing that, and so we had 2 opportunities. We could take it over ourselves, or we could let it go. And it's very important to us, especially the people in Horicon, Chestertown, and south of that, Warrensburg, and we felt it was important that we pick up the cost that's necessary to keep that going. So the USGS pays 20%, New York State DOT picks up part of it, and this part includes the electricity and the communications necessary to talk to that site. So it's important for us. It's important for the information we get back from the National Weather Service as far as predictions and flooding and all that. So as far as I'm concerned, this is very important. We haven't paid for it before, but it looks like we should pay for it now. What you're seeing for here is a request to enter in a contract, and the one below that is to get some dollars to pay off the second half of this year.
All right. Do we have a motion to get number 3 on the floor? Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? Supervisor Simpson?
How much is the cost? Is it per year? Is it?
It's $6,600 minus 20%, which USGS picks up, and you take that number and divide it in half because they're going to shut down their part of it, or they're going to stop funding it on July 1st. So we need to pick this up so we don't lose connectivity to that.
I think Supervisor Brock had a... Did you have a question?
No, mine
Yeah,
was the same.
okay. Chairman?
Yeah, I just, why did they stop funding?
The USGS did not stop funding it. Actually, it was being partially paid for. This piece was being paid for by the Hudson River Blackwater Regulating District, and it's not involved with any of the dams. And the other part of the problem is this river is only in Warren County. It doesn't cross county lines, so that kind of kicks it back to us.
Any other questions? Supervisor Monroe, did you have one, or?
Well, I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, I wonder if we should just contact USGS and say this is something that's always in the past has been paid for by the USGS, right?
They have not paid this part of it. They have only paid a small part of it. Let me give you
Going way back. I remember getting all the river gauge information for probably 50 years when we were thinking of building a hydro project. I thought it was all paid for by the USGS back then.
Less than 5 years ago, the USGS, the federal government, stopped funding a lot of things. So there's been umpteen USGS river gauges across New York State that do not have funding anymore, and they've actually closed them down. So that possibility is certainly here for this one, that they'll close it down and they'll no longer utilize that information. They're not talking about dismantling it at this point in time, because DOT is still getting their, 8-week readings. So it'll be there, but if we don't do something, or somebody else doesn't step up and pay the other 80%, of this bill, we're not gonna get those readings anymore, and then the National Weather Service won't get that information, so we won't have any of the prediction information as far as where the height of the water is gonna be.
I think we should pay for it, but I think we also should, maybe through legislative committee, refer to legislative, to contact our Congress people and suggest that it's something the federal government should be doing, is providing these river gauges.
The only other part of this, I'm sorry. The part of this that I throw in there, and I understand it is an expense to the county, but it is very important for us, because this river is only in Warren County and nobody else is watching it. At this point, if we do start paying for this, now we have some ownership as far as what happens to it. If somebody else comes along and says, we're gonna shut it off, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, now Warren County has some ownership in this unit. We're not being held hostage from the fact that somebody else can turn it off. So that's one way that I look at it.
Right, any, Supervisor Taylor?
I don't see how we can do anything other than fund it now. My question is, where do we get the funds for this year? It should come out of contingency probably, or?
Our
Brian, is
request,
that what you
in
had?
number 4 is to get it from the contingency.
In number 4, for
Oh.
the next resolution, Brian has, some suggestions as to how we might pay for it, at least for this year, and then we can work at it through budget, I would think, for next year.
We'll have to add it to our budget next year under civil defense.
Is that satisfactory answer? Very good. All right, any other questions on number 3? All right, do we want to refer it to legislative as well? I think Supervisor Monroe has a good suggestion. So we have a motion to adopt number 3 with the contingency of also referring to legislative. All right? We don't have a do we have a motion second on that? No, I didn't think so. Okay, so Supervisor Taylor and second Supervisor Brock. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move on to number 4, which is related.
Number 4 is related in response to Supervisor Taylor. This is, we would like to obtain that funding for the rest of this year, and then, obviously we'll put it in the budget for next year. We didn't find out about this till Thursday afternoon, so we haven't had a lot of time, to work with this, and in order to get it through the system, we would prefer not to, have it cease on July 1st, so, that's why we're here today.
All right, do we have a motion? Supervisor Frazier, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. Anything else this month, Brian?
I have nothing further.
But anything that anybody has for Brian, as long as he's here? All right, well, thank you. I have mine, yep.
I need one.
I do too, I never got mine printed off this one.
I'll bring him this in case.
It's a good thing. Hey, thank you.
All set.
Good morning.
Morning, Sheriff.
You ready for me?
Absolutely.
First one is, request permission to send Sergeant Scott Rawson and Terry Jeffords to supervisor training at the Zone 5 Academy in Schenectady in September, and the cost is $480 per member.
Do we have a motion? Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries.
Request to continue contract with Town of Horicon for Marine Patrol in Schroon Lake for summer months.
Supervisor Gerard, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one carries.
Do you wanna make this a 1 year, or you wanna do this every year, or do you wanna
Do it,
just every year?
whatever we can do it, multiple.
Well, Paul, can't we extend this rather than doing this every year? Can't we just extend it out like 3 years like we did with Schroon Lake?
If everybody's in agreement, certainly.
Yeah, we're in agreement.
All right, so when I have the county attorney write it up, we can write it, say, through 12/31 of 17?
Yep, I
Sound
think we
good?
probably ought to get a motion in a second, just saying that we'll have the county attorney, draft that and
Okay.
make those changes. Motion by Supervisor Simpson. Do we have a second by Supervisor Brock? Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Request funding to start Phase 1 radio system upgrade project for the new sites in Warrensburg, Lucerne, and Stony Creek, and, for the law enforcement vehicle repeaters. And the estimated cost, as you see, is quite high, $959, but I think we've discussed this earlier, and we wanted to know how to get this going, so, we've been speaking with the, chairman. Mark and the undersheriff have, got a program, so we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Supervisor Gerard?
There was, some communication about where we should go digital.
Sean and Mark?
We were saying analog, I believe, because of the cost of all the radios, what they would incur, updating them, and then there was some correspondence just recently that, we might have to go to all digital.
We currently have an analog system, and for the near future, we'll probably stay as analog, but the equipment that we're gonna be buying is analog and digital Phase 1 capable.
Okay.
Okay, so, there's an option to get analog only, but we realize that we have to start to make a migration towards digital. We really have to probably wait for the subscribers, fire, EMS, those types of entities to upgrade their equipment to analog with the digital option as well.
Okay, so this is a good investment, 'cause we can go either way, if in fact we have to.
That's correct, yes.
The supervisor, I don't know if you recall, but when Televate did a presentation back in October of last year, they came up with figures that was gonna be somewhere between $6 and $8 million roughly. The higher end would have been going to an all-digital system. As you recall, we recently, not just us, but everybody across the United States, had the narrowband. So a lot of these fire and EMS agencies that don't have a lot of money to begin with have already replaced these radios. We thought it would be somewhat of an unfunded mandate if we went to a digital system. Now we're telling them, after they just went out and bought new radios, now they gotta go out and buy new radios again. So that's why we've come to what we've come to.
Yeah, I remember that discussion, and that's why we were proceeding, but I just thought within the last month or two, there was some change where we had to, I'm trying to think where the correspondence came from, because that was significant if we did have to do that.
We currently, like I said, we're currently an analog system, and you know, we realize that at some point in time, Warren County is gonna be probably more digital than analog, but as of today, as of probably the next 4 or 5 years, it's still gonna stay as analog. Like I said earlier, I think if we suggest to the fire and police, or excuse me, fire and EMS agencies, DPW, things like that, from now on, the equipment that you buy should be analog. It should work on our existing system, but then should also have this capability. That way, when we switch our mountaintops, you know, channel by channel or whatever, to digital, it won't be a huge expense for, you know, the little fire departments and rescue squads and things like that. It'll be reprogramming a channel or two in their radios. Right now, I don't think they're in a position to do that because their radios are analog only.
Supervisor Taylor?
I want to show my ignorance. When we talked about this the last time, we talked about the need to have the portable units continue to be able to receive information when they leave their cars. I assume that if we move it in the fact that they're not going to be able to affect that.
Sorry, I couldn't
I don't
hear
think
the
they heard you,
question.
Supervisor Taylor, if you could just
Yeah, when we talked about this the last time, we had a discussion about the portable units not being able to receive communications once they left their vehicles.
Correct.
And I just wanted to make sure that the fact that we're not going digital doesn't affect that, does it? We'll still be able to get that capability?
Part of the money that we're asking today is $100,000 to put these vehicle repeaters in the law enforcement vehicles. When Televate did the presentation, their recommendation is don't depend on your portable, put a repeater in everything. But that, like there again, that's the fire departments, EMS, DPW. Our concern is our law enforcement vehicles. We're reutilizing repeaters that were probably 10 or more years old. They were in the vehicles 10 years ago. They were taken out under the previous administration. They were reinstalled, and now we're at a point where, one, we didn't have enough to do all the vehicles to begin with, and two, these pieces of equipment are starting to fail. So.
Yeah, if you look on your sheets on the last two pages, there's a breakdown of what we did, if you have any questions on that. The 959 comes from the new site on Maggie's Road, the new site in Luzerne, and the new site location is being determined in Stony Creek. So if you add those three up and you add 100,000 for the repeaters, that's when you come up with the 959.
And if you're wondering why there's a price difference for each site, the Warrensburg site, we're moving existing equipment that we have that's currently located at DPW. We're going to move that up to Maggie's Road, so that reduces the cost there a little bit. In Luzerne, we're partnering with Saratoga County, and we're going on to a tower that they already have. And Stony Creek is the highest because that would be a brand new facility built from the ground up once we pick a suitable location.
So on that last sheet, Bud, we're looking at Warrensburg, Luzerne,
Stony Creek.
And the 100,000 is for the repeaters, correct, Sean?
That's correct, sure.
And if you look at the sheet before that, Dan, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark and Sean, that page is the estimated cost for all of what we want to do, correct? On the estimated cost recap?
That's correct, yeah, that would be.
That would be everything.
That's the whole project. What we have put in for today, the 959,000 is basically the first phase of that plan.
Sean, why don't you tell them about, we have applied for grant money, and I'll let Sean explain that to you.
We were originally told there was going to be money available back. The grant was going to come out in December. The grant actually didn't come out until, I believe, March or April of this year. There was a cap. I believe the cap was somewhere around 2.5 million, somewhere around there. What you could actually request in equipment. We did do a grant application. We requested around $1.9 million worth of funding. And I found out this morning that 50 counties put in for this money. There's $50 million available statewide, and the amount of requested money is $170 million. We're hopeful that we'll get funding. I can't tell you if we're going to get funded for what we asked. They really are pushing digital. We're walking a fine line by saying we're digital capable right now. But and the other part of it is, based on the timeline that we've been given by DHSES, we won't even know until the end of the year, sometime in December, if we're going to be funded any part of that money. What does that mean to Warren County? That means we just went through an entire building season, spring, summer, fall, whereby we could actually get some work done and get some of these sites up and done. Once we get to the winter months, it's limited what we can do.
Well, that's what we're requesting money for now. We're going to fund this 959 so we can get started like now this summer.
When we had the presentation, the gentleman encouraged us to get started sooner than later to do something because of our significant problems. But refresh my memory on the allocation of funding in the budget process. And is this what you're asking for? Is it non-budgeted? Do we have to set up a capital campaign So in other words, if this is a kickoff, so what we're deciding on now is this particular year's movement forward. And then we need to discuss how we want to continue that in light of what the presentation was and the amounts.
That's correct. There was no budgeted funds for this at all. This $959,000, was recommended that we come here now to tell you what our phase one project is and see where you want to get funding from.
I would think we'd refer that to finance, wouldn't we?
You have to.
We have to refer that, I think the committee would be deciding is if we wanna move forward, we're comfortable with these numbers, and if so, we would advance it to finance, for finance to determine the source of funding. Supervisor Seaver?
First, I apologize for being late. I must have missed some emails with the time changes, so completely my fault. So if you have gone over my next two questions, you know,
That's okay.
cut me off quickly. But I have two questions, one for Frank and one for Sean. The grant funding that you're applying for, if received, could that be retroactive for, monies already spent, or is only monies going forward?
It's actually a very good question. It would not be retroactive. It wouldn't cover anything before the awards. And then, keep in mind, once they do the awards, there's a contract period you have to go through, so things really do get dragged out when you deal with the state of New York.
Okay. And then secondly, and if I'm understanding you correctly, is this not the time then to ask Frank in terms of the budget, like the
You can
impact?
ask Frank anytime you so desired, Rachel.
Frank, you know, I understand as a committee, we're making a decision to move it forward to finance, but I guess I'm wondering the impact to our budget. I'm thinking about the court, college, the radio system, and you know, Westmount, where are we standing with a project like this, at least into the phase one?
Well, you know, that better gets up to the board, what the board wants to do. Wants so much money.
So is there money for it? Can there be made
There's
phase
fund
four?
balance. You know, we can probably take care of the principal and interest on the courts and probably one other project. That's what there is.
Supervisor Brock?
Wouldn't we borrow for this? I think $6 million or whatever it is.
Farm good, but
You wouldn't borrow for the first part, would you? How does that
In
work?
theory, you could. You could borrow for a portion of it, or you could borrow for the whole thing, depending.
It seems like all these things are gonna come due around the same.
Couldn't,
Maybe I'm wrong.
Supervisor Brock?
couldn't we get a ban and do it that way and then?
I think that would probably have to go, I assume that we could, but I think that would have to go through finance and the finance committee. It would have the treasurer look into it a little bit more and report back.
I mean, our part is simple. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's the money that's the problem, not the.
But yeah, it sounds like it needs.
I mean, this is really more of a budget question than anything else.
Supervisor Gerard?
I'm in favor of moving it. I mean, the presentation was self-explanatory. We have, you know, we have to do this, is critical. And, we have to start somewhere, and I think this is a good starting point for this building here. I would agree 100%. And I'm glad that you brought it forward, because it has been in limbo. And then, I think at finance, there'll be a discussion on how we wanna move forward,
I think so.
other than this here, because of the size of the project, so.
Yes.
It's time. I'll move it.
Have a second? Supervisor Simpson?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I supported it, I hear it all the time up in, my area, how bad the, reception is.
Same, in Hague.
One of the things I find particularly attractive about this is I know Stony Creek has long been essentially a dead zone, and I do see that they're starting to address, so I think some of our bigger problem areas are getting addressed with this, so I think that's a good step in the right direction. Any other discussion on the part of the committee? Supervisor Brock?
Yeah, if it goes to finance, I think they need to know that the grant is not retroactive. So it's actually, I mean, we're kind of trying to do a balancing act between sort of stretching it out so we can get some of the money to pay for it. But we obviously don't wanna, you know, for emergency purposes, we need to get it up and running quickly. So,
We certainly make sure finance knows.
right.
Yeah, because if you look at the breakdown, the $4 million for the project, and if we got everything we asked for, 1.9, so half of it, we're gonna have to fund at least $2 million. That's how I see it, am I wrong? And who's to say if we're gonna get all 1.9 million?
Supervisor Seaver?
Is there a match money with the grant?
No,
Okay.
no, there's no match. One of the things that might be a possibility for us, and I've done it with other grants we have through Homeland Security, that if there's a change in what we actually applied for, I can request a budget amendment through the state. If we decide to take money that may have been going to Stony Creek, maybe we can dedicate that to another site.
Sean, this total 4 million, that is saying, that was not going digital.
That's not going all digital, no.
That was millions more, correct?
Correct.
And we might hit that juncture as we move through this.
A large portion of that extra money would be the subscriber equipment, the portables and the mobiles that the squads have.
Locally, we'd have to come up with it.
That's correct. When Televate did their presentation, they were saying $6 million for analog. They were basically saying, not only new sites, but also replacing a lot of the equipment that's getting pretty old. We have mountaintops that have 8-year-old stuff on them, and the positive is Televate didn't say that our stuff is junk. It's been maintained pretty well. It's working, pretty much to its optimum. It just isn't. We just don't have enough sites to cover the whole county, and the equipment that we have, even though it's well maintained, is getting old.
Supervisor Taylor, did you have a?
Yes, Sean, is there a risk that, you said we're right on the line in terms of calling ourselves digital capable or something like that?
Perhaps that wasn't the best way to explain it. There's certain things that DHS pay for. Back in January, February of this year, I reached out to a gentleman by the name of Robert Barbado. He actually oversees this grant process, and he knows what the grants will and will not pay for. It was brought to our attention around that period of time that perhaps they would not pay for vehicle repeaters, because that was something we were actually going to ask for. When I spoke with Mr. Barbado on the phone, he said they absolutely will not pay for vehicle repeaters, they won't pay for radios that go on cars, will not pay for portable radios. They deem that stuff as subscriber equipment, and they said they would not pay for that. So when you look at what is permissible under the grant, we didn't ask for anything that was not permissible, but we had to be very careful what we were actually asking for.
Is there a risk that because we're not digital, that we might not get anything in terms of the grant? It might go to another county that is digital.
We followed their guidelines and
We're within the parameters of what they've asked us for. We're part of a multi-county interoperability consortium. Brian LaFleur is actually Warren County's representative on that. That was one of the things. They want to know, are you part of a regional group? And we are part of a regional group. We work towards common goals.
There are a lot of counties in the state that are low band. Never ever will be anything but analog. And they're getting funding as well. The purpose to go digital, if you are going to a trunk or a control system, which we don't have, then you would have to use digital equipment. That's the only requirement in the grant. If you're building a digital system, you have to buy digital radios. Makes sense. We're not in that scenario.
Supervisor Seaver?
I guess just one last question. Obviously, the presentation we had before and the information this morning, we talked about how the equipment is close to out of date, certainly not what you want right now, and safety becomes a concern. After this investment, what's the lifespan of the financial investment as a county that we're making now? Like how long before we're back at the table again talking about needing to upgrade?
Till the equipment's deemed obsolete or in need of replacement?
Correct.
Usually get about 7 years of good luck. And it's not unlikely that it'll last a lot longer than 7 years, but if you budget in your mind that in 7 years we're gonna be coming back and looking towards new equipment, that's a pretty safe bet. Subscriber equipment, you usually look at 3 to 5 years. Portable radio gets all beat up, 3 years, guy takes care of it, or mobile is 5 years. once again, people can run their stuff significantly longer than that. But because it's the infrastructure, if somebody's radio in their car doesn't work, we just have one car down. If somebody's radio, or if our radio on the mountaintop doesn't work, then we got a lot of cars down. And so you err on the side of caution. But most, industry standard is about 7 years.
And how long has it been right now?
We're on, about 8 years on our system?
2004.
So it's about 10 years, yeah.
Almost 11, right, Brian?
Yeah, 2004, we did a major upgrade on all the tower sites. That equipment is all 2004. The sheriff has been upgrading the cars. They're probably, 6 years old maybe, something like that.
The new radios, yeah.
But, the equipment on the mountain sites is at 10 right now.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We have any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Topics for discussion, Sheriff?
Yeah, just a couple of things, and I'll have Sean cover B. A is, just to keep you appraised, we filled 3 positions in corrections. 2 have resigned and gone on to work for state docs, and 1 was a new hire. And the impact on the budget is, $7,200 savings in the salary code.
Okay.
Any questions on that? And, we've had, speaking of old equipment, this next item we've had in the jail for almost 11 years, and I'll let Sean tell you what he's gone through trying to replace it.
We have a 400-gallon hot water storage tank which services the correctional kitchen at the Warren County Sheriff's Office. Months ago, it was detected that the tank actually started leaking. It's about 10, 11 years old. We had 2 different vendors come in and look at the tank, tell us what's involved with getting it replaced. There was a serious concern that because this tank sits directly above the correctional facility, and it had already previously leaked into one of the, I think the sergeant's office down below, that this could cause significant damage if this thing were to really start gushing and break open, so to speak. We worked with Martin Offerdew, and he deemed it an emergency, and the tank is currently in the process of being replaced. I'm told that the 400-gallon tank is being replaced with 2 200-gallon tanks. The reason that's being done, you can shut individual tanks down if you need to do work as opposed to having one large tank. BPI Mechanical Service was selected as giving us the lowest quote to do the work, and it's $19,844. The second item on the list was the damper controls for the Sheriff's Office HVAC system. The damper controls allow adjust the mix of fresh air being brought back into the building, whether you're heating or cooling. It was discovered that when we were having problems during the heating season, that a great number of the dampers have actually failed. If the dampers didn't fail, the motors that actually actuate the louvers failed or linkage broke. We had 2 different companies submit prices through a bid process. The bid was opened Thursday of last week, and the lowest bidder was Train US Incorporated at a price of $25,963. The other quote was $27,390. No other companies bid it other than Train and BPI. So we're going to have to move forward with getting the dampers replaced as well. Yes, sir.
George?
Do we have a maintenance budget, in other words, that these items can be paid for out of line items that are budgeted?
We didn't budget for that this year. These are unforeseen things happening that we did not budget for.
And moving forward with the age of the building, are we gonna have to, I think we're gonna have to start looking at,
I agree.
and that, does our buildings and grounds, do they work conjunctively with you guys as far as what your building's needs might be, or futuristically what the roof condition is, all the things that could go wrong with the HVAC systems, the heating?
We have people that have been trained by the different vendors to take care of that stuff. It's one thing to know that you're going to need a new roof in 2 or 3 years. These were unforeseen. The concern with the damper controls is the fact that it's putting an extra strain on as we go into the air conditioning system. Over the last 2 summers, we've had extensive issues with our air conditioning system actually failing. So, knowing that the dampers, because they're allowing this hot, humid air to come back in and not being able to control that, that's why we thought we should get that replaced. On the backside of that, because the system is working inefficiently, it's driving up the electric cost to run this equipment.
And I think, Dan, to answer your question, you know, JR, Brian, before that, we're trained for that building, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, that's a state-of-the-art building, that's totally different than this building. So JR is, you know, he'll come to us and tell us if he thinks, needs a replacement. This was just totally shut down. So,
And
he is, you know, he
I think
is.
we all understand it. I was just looking at it, it looks like now's the time that this stuff's gonna start to happen. And maybe he could do a good review of the building, and we could start looking at it, you know, we should have a line item
For the
so that when these things go wrong, we can go to
Yep.
because it's gonna continue to happen.
We will do it for this year's budget, and I'll make sure he,
We'll have a good look at a review that, if he works with it all the time, that would be great.
Yep.
Supervisor Beatty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask you, Supervisor, McDevitt had a great question, and I told him I'd ask it. The drug forfeiture money, I know a lot of these things come up, like, you know, the maintenance, you know, unforeseen, obviously we didn't budget for it. First of all, I don't know how much drug forfeiture money we have, and second of all, if we do have a pot of this drug forfeiture money, can it be used for something like this?
can't be used for that.
Can't be used for that,
No.
okay.
So if we used it for that, they would say it would be planning the budget process, and the Fed would come in and, we got a good pot of money, and we are using it strategically to help in, you know, so that we don't violate the budget process. But this clearly, matter of fact, I checked, before we come over here, I asked Lieutenant Stockdale, who keeps track of that stuff, I said, hey, can we use any of these asset money to replace me? Absolutely not.
Okay, so it can't be used for any unforeseen maintenance, it can't, okay. Okay, well,
I tried already.
okay, well, that's,
Supervisor McDevitt?
I guess, how much drug forfeiture money is available for strategic issues?
I haven't checked in a while, but if you remember, last year at this time, we got a check from the federal government of over $400,000. So there's still quite a pot there.
And then, I guess my next question would be, going forward, what would be the game plan in terms of effectively utilizing $400,000? What specifically
I don't think you have a game plan, because I don't think the federal government wants you to see the game plan in the budget process. You know, you use it for emergencies, you use it, we bought a lot of equipment with it, we do during the course of the year. We actually pay for we supplement our whole canine unit with seized asset money, that's allowable, so that's something.
Which is a great use.
Yeah, and we also use it for our drug enforcement, any of the times our drug team has to go in and raid a building, we use our SWAT team, that's all funded by, asset forfeiture, something that we couldn't have done with a regular budgeting process. So if you're careful with it, which we are, there's a lot of things, and certainly I have, I put this out publicly before, we have a list of all the money that we've spent from seized asset and what we've purchased since 2008 when I took office, and we certainly have that available if you'd like to see what we've purchased. We bought computers, we bought cars, cameras, we've purchased a lot of items that we wouldn't normally have the money to pay for. And again, I have that for anybody, anytime you wanna see it. I think up to this point, we've spent, well, I think since I've been in office, we've got close to $1.2 million in seized asset money, just cash. And we spent about $750,000, $800,000 of that, on items that we can use in law enforcement.
And just one last question, and again, because I haven't been following this, but, you know, you read the national news and, you know, it seems like every week the cameras are an issue. And I know, Sean, maybe 3 months ago, I think he answered a question at a public meeting indicating that you had done a seminar for law enforcement agencies. So I guess my question is, what is the status of that, or have we done
What,
something?
the body cameras?
Yes.
Yeah, we actually have, almost a year now, since I've asked Sean to look into it. We are gonna go to body cameras for our police officers, and that's gonna be, paid for through drug seizure money, because they're not cheap. But, once we made that decision, you would not believe how many vendors there are out there for these, people are looking to make money, so there's a vendor on every corner. We wanna make sure that the camera that we buy is worth buying. I don't care if it's a little more expensive, but we want a good camera. So Sean has been doing that for a year. We've been bringing in companies left and right. We've also included our PPA now, because there's a lot of police officers that are a little skeptical about wearing body cameras. We think at some point in time, the federal government is gonna get involved, and they're gonna come out and say you have to wear them. But, we're gonna get a good one soon, and, we're gonna implement it.
And just one last observation, I don't envy you in your job trying to implement cameras, okay? Because I can appreciate, a natural reluctance on the part of, police officers to maybe say, I don't appreciate this, right? So trying to effectively and positively implement it is not an easy job, so.
Yeah, it's not, and I think probably it's a culture, certainly a culture change, but I think it's a change that we have to get into, because, there are many police agencies across the country that have been using them for a while. And as you well know, with Ferguson and Baltimore, us cops are getting no respect from anybody anymore, okay? We always have our ups and our downs, and after 9/11 and our cops went up with the firemen up the towers, we got a lot of respect for a few years from that. But now with this, and it's affecting trials, it's affecting trials. It just affected a trial last week. The police are taking a shot everywhere, not just police, but prosecutors as well. So, I think the body cameras are the wave of the future. I wanna make sure our guys remain professional, and I think they are. I think our guys are as professional as any police agency in New York State. But, I think it's something we need to go to, and certainly that's something that the taxpayers won't have to pay for. We've got a good, narcotics group that's, getting a lot of enforcement and seizures, so we will certainly pay for that with tax that money.
Supervisor Brock?
How much, just out of curiosity, how expensive are the body cameras per person?
On the higher end, it's about $1,000 a piece. We've done a great amount of research. We've put together a volunteer panel of patrol officers, investigators, sergeants, that actually asked to be involved with the policy development and to be involved with the test and evaluation process for the different vendors. We currently have 2 cameras out on the road right now from 2 different vendors. There's pros and cons associated with each one. One of the things as we go down the road that we've been looking at, you can buy cameras for say $300-400, and they'll do everything that the $1,000 camera will do. But if you buy one of those less expensive cameras, like say from Taser Industries, there's a associated cost that you don't realize up front, or may not realize up front, and that's this data storage that they're going to charge you because they store everything on something called evidence.com. It's a cloud storage, and you're paying every month on top of the purchase price for that storage. And as we move forward with the test and evaluation, and we're looking at having our own in-house secure server. We think that'll be most cost-effective for the county. We think it'll work to fit our needs. A representative of Taser actually called me last week, and the first thing I told him, I said, I've read articles, I've seen the horror stories of what your company costs once you get involved a year or 2 down the road. I said, we don't want to see the same problems. They're actually going to come and meet with us either this week or next week, and they said they could do something perhaps where we could store it ourselves on our own secure server. So we've probably evaluated somewhere around half a dozen cameras right now, and there are pros and cons associated with each and every one. So.
And I think though, what you gotta realize that across the country, there are so many police agencies that are reacting to the news media, and they're just jumping on board and getting these things, and they're not really investigating. And I'm not a believer in that. I'm a believer, I think it's gonna help our officers be more professional, and we'll be able to show our side of the story, because so many times, nobody sees our side of the story, We always get, the guy beat me up and he beat a confession out of me, when it's not true. So, I wanna make sure we do the right thing and not just react because of the media. We wanna make sure we get the best product out there that's gonna work for a long time, not for a short time.
Supervisor Brett?
Yeah, I know a little bit about I had cameras and stuff for my computer, and the one thing that would concern me is their durability or reliability. I mean, you don't wanna have one break down in the middle of something and then someone you arrested use that and say, well, they did this to me, because he knows the thing broke down, and then you end up, cost is not the only thing we need to make sure it's, because now that it's part of the loop, you wanna make.
Just so you know, Jim, I don't know if I thought I stated it, I'll state it again, cost is not a concern, I mean, it's a concern, but
Right.
that's not the relegating factor for us choosing one. We want one that's gonna last, one that's gonna do what we want it to do. If it's more expensive, we're gonna buy it.
All right, Supervisor Seaver?
I know time of the essence this morning, but I'm just wondering if perhaps at a future meeting, maybe, but it would be worth talking a little bit about asset forfeiture and the guidelines around it and how it comes about. I know for me, I didn't really learn about it till I was in the criminal justice field. It seems to be a hot topic. People always say pay for it with asset forfeiture, but there's so many guidelines, and there were many times I've wanted to assist a victim with that fund, and I know I couldn't. And then it's split between agencies and it's something that maybe would be worth a 5-minute presentation at a
We
future
certainly can
meeting.
do that, and I can certainly give you a copy of what the rules are, anybody that wants it, I can, you can read yourself as well.
Just think maybe it would be good for the
Sure.
committee, if that's.
We could look into doing that at a future meeting. Anything else for the committee this morning?
I think I've covered everything I had on the agenda.
All right, with that in mind, then I'd take a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Seaver, second by Supervisor Simpson, all those in favor?
I don't wanna leave